presentation. The two parts are that why would we integrate SAP with Tableau, and then how do we integrate SAP with Tableau, and how have we done it? So to start on that, I want to set the scene of what we're seeing in our customers and in the wider marketplace at the moment. This is a presentation I was part of in September, and it's around finance, and I just wanted to give you that lens on what we see with data and analytics and finance at this point in time. And PwC had conducted this survey of CFOs across their wider European organization. And I've copy and pasted a couple of statistics from that presentation just to set the scene. So if I start with the right-hand side, 73% of CFOs are considering digital transformation. So 44% of CFOs expect to increase their transformational budget. And 90% of all companies are trying to improve decision-making with digitization initiatives. But when you look at that next statistic, 37% of CFOs consider their firms generally successful or very successful. If you flip that around, that means that's over, 63% of CFOs consider their firms to be unsuccessful with their digitalization projects. And I think that's a really important note to take away from today, is that the vast majority of finance digital transformations as it stands today are difficult, they're challenging, and they're not always successful. But when PwC looked into the use of digital technologies, I'm sure everyone on this call will be delighted to know that the maximum score was attributed to dashboarding as being the most widely used technology. So we know that digital transformation is on the agenda, and we know that dashboarding is probably the most readily adopted tool and the kind of the first step into it there, followed by robotic process automation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this, and then I saw this article today in the Irish Times, and it was saying that embracing data analytics is non-negotiable for businesses to stay ahead of increasing risks. So internal auditors say that the lack of skills and resources are the biggest barriers to adoption. Now, when everyone on this call has a skill set or would like to have a skill set in data analytics, analyzing data, particularly as it pertains to Tableau, and so it's just to reiterate how your skills are in such demand at this point in time. So we found that, or the survey found that the top three barriers to adoption were lack of skills, so 49%. And that means that within a finance team in an organization, now nearly half the finance team are lacking the skills to build a confident dashboard or data pipelines to be able to connect to the source systems. The lack of resources, so 24%, and a lack of time. Okay, so they don't have the right people with the right skills, and they're not being given the time to spend on building out data analytics within their business. But we know the demand for digital transformation is very important within finance. So again, that kind of to reiterate that fact that your skills are going to be very much in demand. I personally don't think that you need to be from finance to help transform a finance department. I think you need to be able to bring the skills of data to a finance department. So just to say that demand is there, we see it every single day, and I wish you the best of luck with it because I think there's a great opportunity for everyone on the call. So let's talk a little bit about what we see in the environment before I bring in Kevin then on the SAP aspect of this. So every business has the same problem. We need to make decisions faster than ever. We're looking toward data for insight on our most burning issues, and it always takes too long to get answers from it. And we would see that right across the board. Very hard to argue with that. And why does it take so long to get answers? So we think there's too much noise, right? So there's more data than we know what to do with. There's no index or catalog of it. It's not accessible because it's locked inside silos and apps. The data has gone stale by the only get a snapshot. There's no history, causes, or explanations. Incredibly hard to come by. It's so hard because businesses have only been trying these strategies and they kind of bump into them along the way. Regular reporting gives decision makers frequent updates, but it's time and resource intensive. Data analysts are required with dedicated teams to report on complex matters and dig into business questions. And this sometimes work on a case-by-case basis, but some businesses find it very difficult to scale it across their organization. And building an enterprise data warehouse is a very big, costly, and longer project. So we've identified a couple of ways of going about solving the problems within the different organizations, starting with dashboards, where you're connecting, as we'll hear Kevin talk about, Tableau to the source systems or to the data, whether it exists in Excel or it exists in different systems around the organization, the likes of Salesforce. An analytical prototype is when we start to build data pipelines and bringing multiple sources together for kind of rapid analysis within a dashboard. When you move on towards an independent data mart, you're introducing the concepts of data modeling, data warehouse. You're scaling your data with data governance across the organization. And then, of course, that's kind of maximized when you get to an enterprise data warehouse. So this is the journey that we think most of our customers are on at the moment. So just to wrap up from my piece, why financial data integration is important is that a recent survey that we've looked at showed that 90% of all companies are trying to improve decision-making in their finance function through digitization activities. And SAP, as we know, is a core part of that, as with Oracle. Finance data integration is set to play a key role in facilitating this. So let's go through these 4 points. The effective financial data integration allows decision makers access to the information they need when they need it, with the confidence that the data will be free from inaccuracies. Financial data integration removes the need for manual reporting, allowing teams to spend more time doing more valuable work. And enabling effective financial data management enables financial analysts to find significant savings that can cover the invested cost and more. Regulatory requirements are requiring more detail, auditability, and governance. Finance data integration reduces the risk of financial penalty. And we would agree with that. If you can ultimately provide a better window into SAP through Tableau to enable people to look at governed data sets, to ask questions that they want to ask of their information, or even better yet, to set up dashboards that provide a live feed of information regularly to the management teams, then you're freeing up a huge amount of time. If you can take away that automation piece from flat files in Excel, you're really giving a huge amount of time back to those finance teams to be able to analyze the data. And I think with ESG, what we're going to see in terms of regulatory requirements are very significant. And I don't think there's going to be any way of providing ESG-based solutions as part of a regulatory framework without automating your data platforms and data visualization. So with that, then, I'm just going to pass over to Kevin to take us on then into the more technical aspect of it. So Kevin, I'll hand over for the executive summary.
Yeah, perfect. And thanks. I'll give you a shout when I want you to roll on slides, Dave. Thank you very much. So with that context that Dave's given us, really great context in terms of the value, the financial aspect of why this is important for finance teams. What we wanted to do is chat through an example that we had recently, where we were working with a specific customer to connect Tableau into SAP, and just I suppose some of the complexities and some of the wins that we saw with that. So one of the specific benefits here, I suppose, as Dave has mentioned, right, if we're connecting Tableau with SAP, we're really looking at bridging that gap between core systems that are embedded in an awful lot of enterprises with something that's a bit more dynamic and flexible, so you can report on really key information. So 3 key points, I think, to run through. So one, why is financial data integration so important? I think Dave has given us a really solid context on that. Again, with the difficulties of a disjointed data process, if you have a complexity within that, you're going to slow down from a regulatory point of view. You're going to be open to more risks. Again, Dave has given us a really solid context there. So really what we want to do, what I want to do now is run through this case study, talking about what it actually looks like to connect that. Can you tick on there, Dave? Perfect. So This specific case study was with a professional services firm, and we were dealing very much with at partner level, so the most senior level within the PS firm. And the requirement that was set out was that the partners wanted to have daily updating reports on their key metrics to make sure that they could run the business and dig into that data effectively. So not just headline numbers, but I want the ability to actually dig into this and analyze this information. And the information they were looking at, if anyone is familiar with professional services, it's quite common across any PS firm. You want to be looking at utilization, WIP or work in progress, debtors, and then also your cash flow. So really what the partners were looking at was across these kind of 4 pillars, I want very clear, concise reporting, but the ability to dig into this to get answers. A bit more context about this. So all their financial, their billing, and their time tracking data was stored in SAP, and a significant amount of work had already been done. So like there was a history of reporting and data modeling that had already been carried out within SAP BW. So that's the business warehouse. They had been previously using business objects, which is a SAP reporting tool, but it just wasn't cutting the mustard. It wasn't giving them what they actually needed for their reports, especially with the complexities they had. And so they didn't want to rebuild all of that logic that was held within BW. They didn't want to have to extract it from source and go through that entire process again, but they wanted to make sure that they could leverage Tableau, and they also had quite a significant amount of security requirements. As you can imagine, if you're looking at partner level information, but also able to drill down, you need to make sure your data governance and your security is well set up. So that's, I suppose, setting the scene. Dave, do you mind taking on to the next? Perfect. So I want to chat a little bit about how we approached this ourselves and how we worked with this client, and then I'll dig into some of the technical aspects as well. So the first phase that we ran through, because this project grew and grew. The first phase was with partners, and then we expanded it out. What we did was we ran a number of workshops with both the finance team, and then also with we engaged with a number of kind of key stakeholders, so end users. And so what we wanted to do was not just say, okay, well, we want to know about utilization, work in progress, debtors, and cash flow, but what are the key business questions? So if you had this data, how would you use it? So if you're familiar, anyone on the call familiar with building and designing dashboards, the standard kind of process, how do you want to use this data? What do you want to get out of it? And let's make sure that we can facilitate you asking those iterative questions. The second piece was we want to understand from a security and governance perspective what the requirements were. So non-functional requirements, really to make sure that the environments that we were helping to provision would have all the governance that they would actually need in place. And then a good chat about the high-level technical challenges they'd already experienced and the wider user group had already experienced. Because it's really good when you're deploying something new to understand, okay, well, have people already have experience with this, or if they had a bad experience with a previous deployment, so we can make sure that we're not walking old ground here. So when we did this, we performed a technical evaluation. So the Information Lab in Ireland, we performed a tech evaluation on the existing solution implementation. And then we also had a good chat with the internal Tableau SAP specialists to understand not only just where they are right now, but what is the roadmap. And so this is a little while ago. And so there's been quite a substantial amount of changes within the Tableau and SAP connectors over the last few years, which is really good to see. And so a lot of that has been, we were working quite closely with the product team to feed back our experiences with that. And it was really nice to see that kind of tightly knit together. And the last piece there is the way we carry out most of our deployments with clients is this iterative build process. So we'll choose a section of key reports, and we'll build those, iterate through, go through a testing process, and then start releasing them to get buy-in. Dave? Thanks. So again, when we engaged first, the client had initially been using, there is a SAP BW connector, so you can directly connect in to SAP BW. SAP BW the connector is a little bit challenging, right? So it can be useful for initial exploratory reporting, but definitely at the time and still in many ways, it's quite limited in functionality. So when you're building reports, you don't have the full functionality of Tableau Desktop. And overall, with the level and volume of data that we were talking about, we were hitting performance issues. So between our own research and then working with the internal Tableau teams, the idea that we came up with was to look instead not at the SAP BW connector, but at the SAP HANA connector. And for anyone who's not familiar with SAP, the way this works is that we'd have an SAP BW, that's the business warehouse where you'd be modeling an awful lot of the information. And then that's driven underneath by SAP HANA. So that's an in-memory database that SAP put in underneath it. Really performs really well, very high speed in-memory database. And so what we were looking at doing was, how do we take the information that's in BW, and instead of trying to go through the BW connector, how can we access that same information through the HANA connector? And the way that you can do this, and this is, I suppose, a little bit what I'll talk about, there's an architectural slide and a couple of slides that'll give a picture of this. Really what we were looking to do is to make sure that we can have really strong performance, that we can use the standard Tableau connector, so you get all of the standard Tableau functionality for the reports, and then also that that you're not losing any of that complex business logic within BW that's actually held there. So what we were able to do was, replicate the BW queries within SAP HANA and then connect directly to those. Dave, do you mind clicking on to the next? Great. So this slide is it gives it a little bit of a better indication, I suppose. So on the left-hand side here, we've got SAP BW, and so a couple of the key points when you're bringing data through SAP, you'd connect into the different sources and you'd model it, and those models, those data models, are known as composite providers. Within the composite providers, you have all of your data structured as you need, and then you can write queries in SAP against those. And so that's really what things like business objects would use. So that's a reporting tool for SAP. So what we were able to do is you're able to take either the composite providers or the queries, and you're able to materialize them within SAP HANA. So you're able to make them available within the SAP HANA engine, so that when Tableau is connecting to it, it's not connecting through the application connector to BW, but connecting through a standard database connection into SAP HANA. And by that way, you can build all of your reports as normal. You can use row level security as you normally would. And so we were able to implement quite a complex nested security model for all of the partners, which was great. And we were able to have daily updated information flowing straight to them. So they were automated reports that would be rolled out. Next slide there, Dave. Perfect. So in terms of where this went to then, so we had this initial context where they were trying to use Tableau. They initially started off and had challenges with the BW connector. We were able to go in and redesign the architecture in such a way that it was actually feasible to roll this solution out to thousands of users across the organization. So we're able to leverage the power of SAP HANA so that you've got really solid performance as that scales out to a significant user base. And specifically within the context of finance, there's specific performance challenges, as you can imagine, with month or year end. So you end up with a lot of burst usage. But even with that, the architecture was able to handle everything. The same architecture that we initially sketched out for the partners, again, was able to scale. So we had a 3-node Tableau server deployment. And because of the fact that we were able to set things up to leverage all of the business logic that was already built and developed within BW, it now means that new reporting requirements can be met very, very quickly. So all the data is structured and replicated into HANA, and now we've got an internal team within the client that is set up to connect in, build all the reports, and is now being able to upskill on Tableau reporting design principles. So not only were we able to get those key reports out to the partners, we've also able to enable them in setting up a self-sufficient team so that they can continue their finance analytics into the future. Perfect. So Dave, do you want to summarize there? Or are you kind of happy enough? I mean, and I suppose the key point here is really, as you said, there's a pretty strong motivation across most organizations to standardize and to automate financial reporting. I think one of the challenges an awful lot of organizations can face is that they've got a lot of information, a lot of business logic contained within different systems. Really what we're looking to do is make sure that instead of trying to start from scratch, that we're actually able to leverage that in different ways and speed up that process.
And I think that's very fair. And I think it also gives you the opportunity to scale that business information right across an organization. Like you said, you scale to thousands of users using Tableau. And that gives you that scale and functionality that you weren't going to get from Business Objects. So I think it's a really nice solution. So yeah, well done. And Kate, thanks. That's us. I don't know if you'd like maybe to do the questions after Deirdre's finished presenting, if there's any. Or
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'm sure people have plenty of questions. Thanks so much, Kevin and Dave. That was great. Plenty of food for thought there for everyone. So now we are going to move into our second presentation of the day from Deirdre Hayes, who's going to speak to us about her experience of creating Tableau Champions in her organization. Deirdre, you want to take it away there?
So good afternoon, everybody. First, I hope you can see this, Kate. Can you? The PowerPoint I'm sharing.
That looks good. Thanks, Deirdre.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak to you today about our Tableau community and how we built up our Champions program. So firstly, let me introduce myself. As Kate said, my name is Deirdre Hayes, and I am an IT project manager in VHI focusing on data. So I manage a team of developers and analysts, and we look after the enterprise data warehouse, the operational data store, and some reporting tools, which include Tableau. So in addition to this, we produce regulatory, pecuniary, and operational reports. Part of my role is to work with data stakeholders to ensure that they can maximize the value and insights from the vast quantity of data that comes through our systems every day. And this includes having responsibility for the Tableau user community. So just to give you some background on VHI, particularly for our international attendees, VHI, or the Voluntary Health Insurance Board, is the largest private health insurance company in Ireland. As a company, we have been in operation for over 60 years, and as such, we have many customers who have been with us for decades. So over the years, we've diversified into other insurance markets, and we now cover dental, travel, life, mortgage, and international insurance. In more recent times then, we have moved into the area of healthcare services, and we have a growing health and wellbeing business. So this includes the provision of urgent care through our network of VHI 360 clinics, for example, our Swift Care clinics, our hospital at home services, screening services, as well as a host of other supporting services like online GP and services that are delivered digitally. So what this means for my team is that we're working with all kinds of data from a range of different markets and systems, and we support a cross-functional user base. So from medical colleagues to call center colleagues, administrative and sales, and that's just a few of them. So I suppose these users will have varying data requirements. They have different use cases and user cases. They have different levels of data literacy, and our team have to support all of them. So that's just to give you a flavour of the environment we're working in. Tableau was introduced in VHI in 2019. So we opted at that point for a self-service model, which is managed by IT, but with the business areas creating their own dashboards. I suppose the aim of such a model was to enable business users to conduct analysis quickly and independently, to enable, I suppose, faster time to insights and improve organizational decision making. We also wanted to increase response times to changes in the business environment, and we had a very good example of this when some of our Tableau users in finance were very quickly able to create dashboards for our management team, and they outlined how the business was performing against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. They did this very quickly in the space of about 2 weeks, and we were up and running when COVID hit. So I suppose, as you can see from the stats on the screen, the investment in training and certification has been significant for us. For example, we have 110 colleagues that have completed the Tableau training. You can see from the stats we have a very large user base with 460 users. Of those, 60 are developers. We have 10 Tableau Champions. And I suppose, our community is quite active. So we've had 71% of those users using the system in the last quarter. Over the past 2 years, we have been working on driving the adoption and I suppose building up the development of Tableau internally, particularly for the developers. And how we've done this is we have been holding regular super user sessions. So we run these on a monthly basis. We've hosted a number of internal design sessions by Tableau, and we've created a Tableau VHI community space with resources and tools that will help people get started. So I suppose in order to continue with the adoption across the organisation, we're now looking to build up our Tableau viewer community, and that's where our focus will be moving to. Just in terms of the user community, so I suppose, as we all know, the key to empowering people is education and support, and that's been the key focus for us in terms of getting our community up and running and building up our user base. So our Tableau Champions are our strongest Tableau users, and they would have been on a journey from viewer to super user up to project leader to champion. Now, not all of our users would follow this path, but absolutely all of our users would need some form of guidance and some form of support. So I suppose this slide is just showing a high-level synopsis of some of the actions we took to mobilize our users. So prior to go live, we selected 20 users from across multiple business areas to attend formal Tableau training. And at that time, I created the Tableau in-house community site, which had a lot of resources, links, webinars, links to blogs, tools, anything that I thought would be of use to somebody starting in Tableau. So once we went live, I immediately at that point set up the weekly user sessions with our 20 users. And as time went on and they got up and running and got more confident with Tableau, these were dropped back to fortnightly and then monthly. And we continue to run these monthly super user sessions to this date. And I suppose the reason for that is to ensure that any new users get the same level of support. Then as part of the I suppose, establishment of the community, we also ran project leader in-house training. So the project leaders have a huge role to play in the governance of our system because they control who can publish from their business areas and also who can access the dashboards in their business areas. So this in-house training, we just put it together internally, but what it covered off was topics such as data protection, GDPR obligations, different processes, different procedures that we had to be followed in line with our policies. So once the initial group of users then started to create the dashboards, so we had our developers and our project leaders up and running, we then ran Tableau design days and doctor sessions in-house, and this allowed those users to get feedback on the look and feel and functionality of their dashboards. I suppose that's one of the things, is a bit of a leap to go from the Excel type tabular reporting to something a little bit more visually interesting, and that was something that was a challenge. So that was very helpful for the users at that point. Finally, then for our viewers, we ran an enablement session, and that's really to help our viewers understand, how to interact with the system, how to use filters, maybe how to navigate the system, what different buttons mean. So we've had those sessions running as well. So this is just to give you a flavour of some of the topics that we cover off in the user group sessions that I mentioned previously. There's a lot of topics here, but some of the topics, I suppose, just to explain that how I run super user groups, which are monthly, I would usually give a talk on a topic of some type. Then we might have a demo from somebody, or we might have just a discussion on general topics. So I suppose we just look at some of the topics just to give people maybe some, I suppose, food for thought. Design principles, so look and feel, placement of the most important information. We looked at use of colour, white space, consistency in the look and feel of your dashboards. Typography, so all about fonts, sizes of text, at what point it's appropriate to use different texts. Again, consistency is important, not to have every kind of font going on your dashboard. We looked at the psychology of visualization and how people perceive visual messages. So as well as that, maybe considering things like, designing for people with colour blindness, etc. We do show and tell, and this is really when people get confident in their work and they're comfortable enough to share with the group. So sometimes people will just say, look, I'm working on a dashboard and would you mind if I show it to the group before I get my users to use it? So again, we encourage positive feedback in these situations, but do people find that very helpful. We've also got the champions to come and do some sessions on tips and tricks. I suppose another topic we did was storytelling, so how to tell a story with data. And for this particular one, I encourage users to take a public data set from a topic that's of interest to them. So for example, if you like to travel, maybe take countries of the world data set, or a historical one like the Titanic, and to try and make a visualization or tell a story with that data. So again, it's the jump from the more traditional tabular or pie chart type reporting to something that's visually interesting and that immediately tells a story. I suppose we often showcase Tableau public dashboards for inspiration and aspiration, I would say as well. We don't want to intimidate people, but it is good to see what can be done with Tableau. We've introduced our users to Makeover Monday and to Iron Viz, and we did have one of our users who's on the call there, I think, enter into the Iron Viz. So it was lovely to see somebody from our user community go that far with the Tableau journey. Some of the other things that I've covered off are maybe new features. So Tableau new features like Ask Data, when that came out, Data Catalog was another one. And more recently then I focused on sessions on data sets. So I suppose as our community's got larger and we have a lot of data on our server, we kind of need to start looking at, managing our data. So I suppose you all know from using Tableau, it's very important that your data sets are streamlined and that they're kind of efficient for use. So I've done sessions on columnar versus tabular data sets, long versus wide data, logical, physical tables, joins, blends, relationships, when to use them. So that's the type of things we've covered off. Just as well as that, users would often request that certain items are covered off, such as Sankey charts or maybe Tableau prep. Now, how I prepare for these sessions is I would go and do some research on the items. But if I can't find the information or if it's beyond my expertise, I will ask somebody else to demo at the session. I have brought in guest speakers from time to time. So we've had a designer in to speak about how he created the look and feel of a well-known app. We've had some experts in from Tableau in to answer questions on topics, that people have requested, just different add-ins, for example. I suppose just to kind of give information on how I get the information together for the topics and the talks. I have joined a number of groups, such as obviously the Tableau Ireland group here, Women in Data, the Data Leadership Collaborative, and that's just a few of them. I've gone through certain blogs, there's different sites that I've signed up to. And this is to stay up to date on data, to understand trends in data and to think about, new features in Tableau. So any information I get, I will either share it directly with the user groups or I will use it to create a talk on different topics. So these sessions, as I said, are on a monthly basis, they're ongoing, and the reason for that is to ensure that our new users are given the same support and education as our previous users. So I suppose as time went on and our user base became more experienced, it then became clear that we needed to establish a group that would assist in the growth of the Tableau community and be representative of our users. So from this, our Tableau Champions program was born, and we initiated it in 2020. So our program consists of a core group of 10 people from across different business areas. So they include, we do have, some IT people, but it's mainly business users. From the start, I had support from a senior finance manager, who I think it was on this call, Terence, who assisted in getting buy-in for the program from senior management. Now, he also managed to get funding for certification for our champions. So this is key to getting the program mobilized and accepted by the business areas. So the goal of our champions program is up there. It's to establish a group of core Tableau users with high competency or experience to lead in developing and supporting a data culture in VHI. And that's the key goal. But we did have a number of objectives. And I suppose the main ones were to work as a kind of a cross-functional group. So we wanted a blend of SMEs and key IT personnel working together. We wanted to review and revise governance processes. We wanted to implement and develop best-in-class practices to ensure data quality and optimal server performance. We wanted, very importantly, to identify and reduce or remove duplication. So this is one of the things we found, that as the user base grew, that there was some duplication, and we could see, as was duplicate, not duplicate visualizations, but duplicate stories being told in dashboards. So that was something we thought that having a champions group that would collaborate, that would be a way to reduce that. I suppose we wanted the group to be a forum to raise or discuss any issues or concerns they have relating to licensing, to servers, the software. We wanted people to be able to cross-pollinate feedback, to peer review dashboards, and also to agree a path to dataset and dashboard certification. And we're still in the process of refining our certification. So I suppose the main thing as well then was to enable the champions to support both their own business units and other business units. So who would make a good champion? So when we selected our champions, we identified 10 of our top Tableau users by considering their engagement in super user groups, looking at their proficiency in Tableau and their role in the organization. So we needed to make sure that these people were committed to Tableau success and adoption in VHI. We wanted them to be vocal advocates of Tableau and to be excited about Tableau and to share their enthusiasm for it with others. They had to be technically proficient in the use of Tableau. We wanted them, very importantly, to be aware of the value of data and the responsibility that comes with managing and using it. They needed to be well connected and influential in the organisation, and if not in the organisation, but at least in their business unit. And finally, they needed to be collaborative, so happy to share knowledge and to assist other Tableau users. So I suppose it's worth pointing out that we did seek the permission from all champions managers before we invited them to participate in the group. And interestingly, since we have the champions program up and running, a number of different business units have subsequently approached me to have one of their team members included in the group. So that to me is a good news story. Just, I suppose, to highlight some help we had along the way. Clearly, we didn't get here alone. So, excuse me, the Tableau Customer Success Program. This was where we first heard of the notion of Tableau Champions. That was through our customer success manager. And she advised us that it might be the next step for us, that our community was growing and it was maybe something we should consider. So she was very supportive in getting it started, and she sent us a lot of information and resources. She does actually continue to support us with the program to this day, and she regularly sends us useful information. Just the next one is Tableau Blueprint. Some of you might know of Tableau Blueprint, but when we went live with Tableau, it didn't exist, or it was certainly in the very early stages. So this is an invaluable resource for all things Tableau related and for getting started. And I think, for everything you need to think about in terms of mobilizing, in terms of getting buy-in, getting manager support. The Information Lab, they've been fully supportive of what we do, and they do assist us in getting access to resources when we need them. The Tableau Buddy, you may not have heard of, I certainly hadn't heard of it, but this was, we had requested maybe to speak to somebody who had set up a champions program, and the NHS took a call with us and offered to be our buddy. So basically the NHS, they have thousands of users and they have hundreds of champions. So it's a much bigger program than ours. But they, very kindly went through some of the pitfalls they had, some challenges they had, and gave us some really good advice on setting up. So they were great buddies to have at the start. Finally, the Data Leadership Collaborative, that is it's a group that I've joined where you can do, they're called brain dates. So they're meetings you can set up with people from all over the world. So, I've spoken to other people, around the world regarding their data community and how they manage it and, some of the things that they do with it. So that's been very helpful for me. In terms of the supports that we have for within our own user community, for our champions, we run monthly Tableau champion sessions. These are separate to our super user sessions, and I facilitate those every month also. So really what it is a forum for everybody in the Champions programme to discuss Tableau issues, to showcase new work for advice and feedback, or maybe to discuss something new, I suppose, that they're planning in their area, or that maybe they're planning project-wise that might have an impact on the server or on licensing. It's also kind of, I suppose, a forum for me to request help from the champions. So, for example, if we're introducing new software or a new version, to request that they're tested for us. Also to, explain some of the challenges I might be having and how we would address them. Or, for example, in things like certifying data sets and how to define that. We have a Tableau Champions WebEx group, but this is really a chat group where people can just pop in links to anything that might be of interest to the rest of the group, or where they can update each other very quickly on anything relevant. And finally, we provide the opportunity to certify. So some of our champions are already certified, and we currently have 3 preparing for the exam in December. So hopefully they'll be certified pretty quickly. For our super users, as mentioned, we have the Tableau community space. So that is a repository for all training information and resources. As I said, I run the monthly super user sessions. We also have 4 annual training programs. These are heavily subscribed, and I do have a waiting list for them. So again, to me, that's a very positive thing, because people really want to engage with Tableau and want to get the training. And finally, the super users are supported by our champions, whom they can turn to for advice or information on how to do things, technically on Tableau. It has been suggested to us that we do in-house competitions such as hackathons and those type of events, but I suppose I feel that our organisation is not big enough for those to be successful. So, our community is very small, particularly our champions. So it might be something we'll look at in the future, maybe with another company or that. It might be something of interest, but for now we haven't done that. But I do see that in a lot of the resources, they would suggest you run those. I suppose this then is what I see as the benefits of the Champions programme. So I've put them up here verbatim on the screen, because I think I suppose it's important to be able to express them in your organisation when you're setting up the kind of, a user community and Champions programme, and you're looking for maybe buy-in and support from management. So, for the organisation, absolutely it increases data literacy, and it does encourage cross-functional collaboration. It definitely has increased awareness of data initiatives, and it has helped with the understanding, the cross-functional understanding of data, what other departments are doing in the organisation with data, and where there's crossover and overlap. As I mentioned, it reduces duplication of data sets, reports, dashboards, and that was something we were keen to address. Just in terms of, I suppose, just to say, it does foster networking and grows the internal user community. So that is important. In terms of the champion, then, learning and growth, they have the opportunity then to contribute to the development of the majority of the organisation in terms of data. And they're recognised as a Tableau expert. So, that is a very positive thing for them to be involved in. I suppose, finally, then, just, to say it hasn't all necessarily been plain sailing, and, there has been some bumps along the way. Apologies, I just jumped off there. So, firstly, some of the lessons that we've learned, that the programme does not run itself and the community does not build itself. And this is an important lesson. There's a significant effort involved in setting it up, in supporting the users, in facilitating monthly sessions. I would say even staying current on data events and Tableau itself, just to ensure that the community is up to date, that your information is fresh. I wouldn't underestimate the effort that's involved in that. It's a cyclical process. So the programme and the community are ongoing, and we have new users always coming on board. So they require the same exposure to resources, to user sessions, etc. I suppose, unfortunately, in addition to that, our experts and champions do move on. And so there's an element of succession planning to ensure you always have a number of strong champions in the wings. And finally, then, this is a personal learning, I suppose. So the in-house Tableau community is all about collaboration, communication, and contribution. as the person building up the Tableau community, you don't need to be the expert in Tableau. Your main role is really to facilitate, the type of cooperation and cross knowledge that's required in the community, and also to give people the tools they need to allow them to build up their own expertise. So that was important for me to learn, because at the start I felt really under pressure to stay ahead technically of Tableau. But in actual fact, you find that your super users, and particularly your champions, will absolutely bypass you technically very quickly. So I suppose they're the learnings, the learnings for me. Just to say thank you to everyone for listening to me, and hopefully you found something useful in all of that. So I'm happy to take questions now if anybody has any for me.
Thanks so much, Deirdre. That was fantastic. Lots of very practical tips there. So I'm sure lots of people will be putting them into use. Yeah, as Deirdre said, if you have any questions for either herself, Dave, or Kevin, you can pop them into the Q&A function there in the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen. So nothing in there yet, but I'm going to get us started if that's okay. Deirdre, I was wondering when this initiative was kind of in the early stages, when you were trying to get buy-in, did you come across any reluctance from anyone in your organization? Did you kind of have to negotiate?
Well, when we first implemented Tableau, we certainly would have come across reluctance. I suppose the self-service element of it was a worry for people, and was a very new venture for certain areas. There were other areas that would have absolutely welcomed it. But I suppose, as I mentioned there, I did have the support of a senior finance manager who was very supportive in driving that and getting the buy-in. But yeah, I think I was saying to Dave earlier, I think when COVID, when the pandemic started, it really came to the fore because the guys in finance were very quickly able to put together some MI dashboards. And I think suddenly, management saw the value of Tableau and really were bought into it. So that has been building. And I think the fact that we're very fast to get to insights now, and that it is quite easy for our business users to get their information, I think that has really helped. They can see the benefit of it.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And I just actually have one more question for either Dave or Kevin, and it's kind of a similar question. But I was wondering what you see as the key challenges for an organization in general if they are implementing a process of integrating SAP into Tableau.
Kevin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the benefits of the case study that we were talking about there was the fact that a lot of the users, or the key stakeholders that we were dealing with, had a really strong understanding of the business logic that was at play, and really understood their own data. I think that can be a really big challenge for a lot of organizations, is the identification of business logic and a confidence in how to understand what the data is actually representing. So I think finding, I suppose the next step to that is making sure that you can really find those people within the organization who have that. And if you're struggling for different aspects, that's really an aspect to kind of nurture and dig into, to make sure that you can build up that data literacy, the understanding, not just more generally data literacy, but with the organization's own data, so that when you go to do anything with it, or when you're looking at visualizing it and representing it, that you can really stand over it. I think visualizations are really, really good up until the point where you can't answer a question on the quality of the data, and then you're going to get hit pretty seriously with it. Dave, anything to add on that?
I suppose if I was to pick two, it would be value. Like, if you can demonstrate the value to your executive leadership team of an analytical project, for example, Deirdre mentioned, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it's during COVID, to be able to get finance information as management information to senior leaders, and then they start to get used to that, and then they start to expect that, then suddenly they see the value, and then you get that executive sponsorship across the organization. But you need all the technology tips that Kevin brings to the table, and Deirdre, to be fair, you need someone who's going to take control of the community and enablement and engagement across the organization. Like, just to say that what you've done in VHI is a model example of building a Tableau community, like across any of our customers. Like, it's really fantastic to see someone who's that passionate about it and puts the resources in place to help people get the skills and then to reskill as they go through their journey. So I think there's been a good user group actually from three different lenses, but Deirdre, really well done on what you've done in VHI. I think that's a fantastic Tableau community you've got there.
I think one point that stood out, Deirdre, for me was as well, when you said that the super users had started surpassing your skills. I think that's probably the best compliment you can get if you're trying to build up a community that
yeah,
is
it
kind of
didn't
an
take them
interesting
long,
point.
Kevin. To be fair, but yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose I felt under pressure at the start, and then I thought, well, actually, these people are the experts, not me. They're using it every day, so yeah.
Thanks a million. So we have one question in here from Jura for Deirdre. How do you see the use of analytics to support decisions on short and long term at VHI? Do you want to scale it?
So I suppose we are building up, we're building up our user community, and as well as that, we're building up, I suppose, our data structures in VHI. So you know, coming out of all this, we see that there's a need to have very solid data definitions and that for our user community. So we're actually spending a lot of time and effort at the moment in putting in a lot of very robust structures so that the user community can report at a layer on top of that. And a lot of that is for decision making. It's also to ensure that, I suppose, our business users are all, you know, reporting on the same data in the same way, that there's consistency across the board. And so any decisions that are made, we're confident that they're all using the same data to make these decisions. But it is becoming, I suppose it's a very popular tool, and it is becoming more and more business critical for us. So I would say, however much it supports decisions now, it probably will grow in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see how, if it's working, you'd want to continue and scale.
Yeah.
Thanks a million, Deirdre. We have another one for you, actually. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I think I see some other questions there. So
yeah. So just from Katie, how do you measure the impact of the program, and what metrics can community advocates in other organizations use to illustrate to the business the value of continued investment?
Yeah, so I suppose at the moment we are trying to come up with, you know, proper KPIs for that. Katie, we would have up to now been measuring in terms of users, in terms of the number of dashboards, in terms of how much usage these particular dashboards get. But I suppose, yeah, we're now trying to look at proper KPIs for that. Maybe have, you know, being part of the Champions program, something that would be in somebody's objectives in terms of performance review and that. And then, you know, use all of that to come up with, you know, kind of, I suppose, a financial return on our investment. So yeah, it has been hard to quantify that, I would say, and we are still looking at that. But yeah, it's a work in progress, I would say, Katie. At the moment, we're literally just quantifying it in terms of usage and adoption. But we are getting to the point where we need to actually come up with proper, strong KPIs for it.
Okay, so it's always growing, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And just final question for now from Matt. Are students encouraged to achieve certification? If so, does that work as an incentive?
So anybody who really engages with our community, you know, we're happy to provide training for them. We do have a budget for training and certification. So for anyone that has requested certification, we've provided it for them. What I would say is the certification has changed in Tableau. It seems to have become more difficult. I think they're closed book exams, whereas when I did mine, they were open book. So we would encourage anyone who's doing certification to be very, very strong technically and be a very strong Tableau user. Because of that, it tends to be just our champions for certifying, just because they are the people who really are the forerunners in our, I suppose, in VHI. In terms of their Tableau usage and their technical expertise. But yeah, it's not necessarily that we would encourage certification, but we do tell all users that it is there, that it is something that they can, you know, they can use, they can apply for certification if they want to do it. And yeah, I suppose it would be an incentive for the champions, but the way it has worked out is all of our champions are being certified anyway. So yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if
Brilliant.
that answers it, Matt, sorry.
No, I think that covers it. Well, I think it does anyway. And actually, not a question, Deirdre, but just a comment. Jura says your use case should be presented at Tableau conferences, and it's very interesting, which I agree with.
Thanks, Jura.
So unless anyone has anything else, I think that's all the questions answered for now. So yeah, thanks so much to all of our speakers today, Dave, Kevin and Deirdre. It's been fantastic. So yeah, we can finish up, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Kate, for organising.
attending.
Thanks, Deirdre. It was great.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Kate.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone, for
everyone for
listening.
joining.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.